is Shamie Kumar. I'm the Senior Director, Clinical Specialist and a Diagnostic Radiographer. Today we'll be hearing from international leading voices from a diverse region to discuss how AI is impacting lung cancer care, from hospital workflows to pharmaceutical collaborations. Our esteemed panel of experts will share their unique perspectives, experiences and insights on the challenges of lung cancer management, the integration of AI into clinical pathways, and the impact on patient outcomes. Today's webinar will be 1 hour long, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for a Q&A session after the discussion. So before we start our discussion, I'd like to introduce our 4 experts, which are from the Philippines, Thailand, Scotland, and Malaysia. So I'll go to our first panelist, Dr. Ashwini Saha, if you'd like to introduce yourself, your background, and your current role, please.
Thank you, Shamie. A very good evening, everyone. My name is Ashwini. I'm the International Medical Director for Lung Cancer at AstraZeneca. I'm a medical doctor by background. I practice in clinical practice and pharmaceutical industry for the past 16 years. And my previous role was the Malaysian Medical Director before I joined the international team for lung cancer. International team is spread across everything outside the US, Europe, and Japan. So we cover from Australia, Asia, Middle East, and Africa, Latin America.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Dr. Pasakon, if you'd like to go next.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Pasakon, and my background is a medical oncologist in Prapok Hospital. This hospital is a referral hospital in the eastern part of Thailand. We are responsible for 2 million people in this area. And I have responsible for the deputy director of the hospital, responsible for the AI and the medical innovation in my hospital. So, and we have joined with the AstraZeneca and Qure in the project, the Lung Ambition Alliance project, that using the AI to detect the missed lung cancer diagnosis and also leverage to the lung cancer screening by the AI genetic rate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Irvin, if you'd like to go next. Sorry, you're on mute still, Dr. Irvin.
Hello. Yes, my name's Erwin. I'm a radiologist from the Philippines, and I'm a member of the AI subcommittee under our local Philippine College of Radiology. So I guess my entry point into AI was when I started programming Python and JavaScript, and I joined the hackathon. So that was basically how I jumped into all of this. So it was very interesting from there. And from there, I went on to policy, exploring policy creation specifically for AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Irwin. Dr. Mark Hall.
Hello, I'm Mark, a radiologist from Scotland. I have been our AI imaging lead in Glasgow, and I've held posts previously as our national Scottish AI imaging lead through our radiology board. I have been principal investigator on several AI projects, mainly to do with chest and lungs, although 1 or 2 involved with the brain as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. So just to start the tone of the discussion, we all know that disease prevalence, population, and healthcare systems around the world varies. So it'll be good for our audience just to understand sort of the wider challenges around lung cancer diagnosis in the various countries that you work in. So Dr. Irwin, I'm going to come to you first. If you can share some of your insights on some of the wider challenges the Philippines face in lung cancer diagnosis.
Well, I was just recently reading up on this, and based on what I know, the #1 cause of cancer in the country for men is lung cancer, and it's breast cancer for women. And cancer itself is one of the leading causes, if not one of the top 2 causes of mortality in the country. So it's definitely a problem we face, and there are challenges. As you all know, the Philippines, we're not exactly one of the more developed countries or one of the first world countries. We're still trying to evolve. So because of that, the usual problems of lack of resources, sometimes we're limited in terms of the diagnostics and screening procedures that are available to us, especially the expertise and the treatment options that we have. So these are usually the hurdles that we face. And I guess reporting of the disease itself is also something we have to face every day.
Yeah. And in contrast to that, Dr. Mark Hall, maybe you can share some insights from the challenges Scotland faces.
Yeah, well, Scotland isn't famed for their health, having one of the lowest mortality rates, Glasgow specifically within the Western world. And mainly that's due to our excessive smoking and obesity. So lung cancer is rife in Scotland. And as such, diagnosing it is one of our national priorities. At the moment, our Scottish government has set a target and released something called the National Optimal Lung Cancer Pathway. And that is the ideal treatment path and time frame that patients should make it from the GP to treatment. And there's a couple of checkpoints in that. Our Scottish government and the UK government say by day 28, everybody should have a diagnosis. And that's usually been through an MDT and have an outcome associated with that. So what that means is from the day the patient presents to their GP with a cough or a chest X-ray or symptoms, and the GP sends them for a chest X-ray, that's day 0. And then they have to make it through chest X-ray report, CT scan, fast track lung cancer clinic with pulmonary function tests, bloods, fitness assessment, getting a PET scan, getting a tissue diagnosis, getting your brain imaged and anything else that's required, then getting the pathology and having a multidisciplinary meeting, all within 28 days. So we as a radiology department face a huge uphill struggle to meet this, given the fact that some places across the country, including Glasgow, are so far away from meeting this 28-day target at present. And if we look at indicative numbers from different health boards, some health boards are 40 days over this 28-day target on average. And one of the things at the start of that is that some boards are 30 days over, or it takes 30 days to get from your GP to a chest X-ray. So if it's taking 30 days to get from a GP to chest X-ray, how can we make a 28-day target for getting all of the rest of the stuff done? So what we've tried to do is use AI, and we'll talk here about that a bit later on.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And sort of what I'm hearing from sort of both sides is resources and time is an issue. Does anyone want to comment on sort of at what stage we are diagnosing these patients? Are we capturing them in the early stages, the late stages, you know, in your various countries, Dr. Irwin or Mark, if you want to respond to that?
Do I go first? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I guess even when AI is being presented to my institutions and to my subspec, it's usually always about earlier detection. Prevention is always better than actual cure. So that's always the push for AI. However, sometimes the resistance is we don't want to overdiagnose as well, because I think one of the pressing challenges that we have in our country is that we also have pulmonary tuberculosis. And as we all know, if cancer is the great mimic, pulmonary tuberculosis is also considered a great mimic. I've had a friend of mine tell me that we had a case of a really large mass in the lung, but when they took it out, the biopsy showed it was just all pulmonary tuberculosis. So it was a cavitary pulmonary tuberculosis. And sometimes they took out a really small nodule, a very innocent looking nodule that looked like a granuloma, but when they took it out and did a biopsy, it was cancer. So these are the pressing issues that we have to consider. Of course, we want to diagnose cancer as early as possible, but we do not want to overdiagnose as well and expose the patient to unnecessary radiation when in fact what we're actually dealing with is pulmonary tuberculosis. So these are the things we're trying to balance out in our country. Thank you.
Yeah.
I say for Scotland, the disease prevalence is a little bit different because we don't have TB and as many mimics as lung cancer as potentially the rest of the countries in the world. But 70%, 73% of cases when they are diagnosed with lung cancer, they're late stage disease, so it's stage 3 or 4. And what we want to do with the National Optimal Lung Cancer Pathway is shift that rate down and increase the number that are diagnosed in stage 1 or 2 or 3 or 2B. And as a result, it's been shown that lower stage disease at diagnosis equals better outcomes. So with the whole point of our optimal lung cancer pathway and using AI to help meet that is to increase the number of patients when they're diagnosed being in stage 1 and stage 2 rather than late stage 3 and stage 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So, Dr. Pasakon, I'm going to come to you here as our oncologist. Maybe you can describe some of the challenges of late-stage cancer in terms of the patient's treatments and outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. According to the TNM staging system, the untreated stage 4 disease has an extremely poor prognosis, with the documented 5-year survival is 0% without the treatment. So, although the treatment outcome in the stage 4 have significantly improved, with the 5-year survival rate increasing from the chemotherapy is about 5%. 25% with the immunotherapy in PD-L1 more than 50%. And the EGFR mutation is about 50% in 5-year survival and 63% in the ALK-positive case. However, achieving the complete cure in the stage 4 remains extremely challenging. So, if we can detect more earlier, beyond the improve the survival rate, the treatment costs for the stage 1, 2, and 3 are significantly lower than the stage 4, especially from in Thailand data. I have to say the stage 1 you use only the $6,000, and stage 2 is about the 7,000, and stage 3 is 8,000. But stage 4 you need more than the $10,000 and maybe the $50,000 with the palliative aims. So this show that dramatic the cost difference between using treatment in the stage 4 can cost up to 7 to 8 times more than the early stage treatment.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to know the difference between the impact of capturing lung cancer in the early stages and how that affects the patients and other aspects around that, which includes costs as well for some countries. So talking about this a little bit further, Dr. Shamie, I'm going to come over to you. From a pharmaceutical perspective, can you share what role does AstraZeneca play within the lung cancer pathway?
Thank you, Shamie. So, what role do we play in the lung cancer pathway is we build partnerships to transform cancer care. Now, how do we do it is, I think, 2 things. One is we have a very bold ambition at AstraZeneca to eliminate cancer as a cause of death. And that, incorporated with strategic partnerships such as with Qure.ai, we are able to approach it in a very sustainable way to transform cancer care via partnerships. Now, how does this take shape in AI integrated lung cancer pathway, right? So at AstraZeneca, we have, as I said, we have this bold ambition, and it's called Lung Ambition Alliance in the international region. Lung Ambition Alliance brings partners together to accelerate advances in lung cancer survival, and it also aims to improve patient outcomes. As I mentioned, the range of area which I covered earlier, so this initiative is across Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, as well as Latin America. And we're running several initiatives. One is to increase screening and early diagnosis, of course, delivery of innovative medicines, and to ensure quality of care by partnering with advocates and policymakers. So how does this come across in a tangible method, right? So in May 2022, we joined WEF Addison Alliance, a public-private partnership that aims to improve early-stage diagnosis of lung cancer through AI, with commitment to screen over 5 million people for lung cancer risk by 2025. Now, where we are today with that partnership with Qure.ai is we have achieved 4 million patients scanned at 2024 December. So that's quite a feat. We have already scanned 4 million patients with AI enabled chest x-rays, who will then funnel through to get a low-dose CT scan. And if that turns out positive, being the gold standard in diagnosis of lung cancer, they will then funnel into the healthcare systems to get the biopsies and the treatment required. So that's how we build a partnership in integrating AI in lung cancer pathways.
Thank you so much for that. So I think it's really important to see, you know, how some of these partnerships has the wider benefit with the patients at the center of what we are trying to achieve on a wider scale of AI adoption. So talking about AI adoption, no software is easy to integrate into a healthcare systems when clinicians, doctors, and everyone is used to using their own systems, and introducing something new can have its own challenges. So talking about some of these AI adoption challenges, Dr. Irwin, maybe you can share some of your insights and experience on how the adoption has been for you.
Okay, so just to clarify, I believe that in our country, we're still at the early stages of AI adoption. So this might not hold true for the rest, where you have a more advanced method of implementing AI. Some of the main challenges we have right now is localization of the model, and making sure that with proper model metrics, that the performance of the AI that was promised abroad based on studies abroad is also similar, if not better, in our country. So we call this model maintenance. And another part of that is calibrating the threshold of the AI to make sure that it matches the disease demographic. As I said, the demographic of disease of lung cancer in the Philippines can sometimes be obfuscated or made a little more challenging because of the other disease that we have, which is pulmonary tuberculosis. So these two can look the same. So like I said, if you're at a hospital with a high incidence of cancer, let's say you have a cancer institute versus a regular hospital that is more known for pulmonary tuberculosis, obviously the threshold for the AI for a lung cancer hospital might not be the same for a hospital that is known more for pulmonary tuberculosis. So this is the challenge, getting enough data and modifying the threshold of the AI, or even possibly retraining the AI to make sure that it is performant across both hospitals.
Yeah, I think that's really important to know. And it's good that you could share that experience as you're in the early phases of adopting AI as part of your pathway. Dr. Malko, I'm going to come over to you because you have been using AI for a longer period of time, and it'll be interesting to see what challenges you had as implementing AI within your trust, and how it sort of developed over time and how you overcame some of these challenges.
Yeah, thanks. I think the biggest challenge we found was it was relatively straightforward. I say that looking back fondly to deploy AI, and we thought once we got the tool in, that would be problem solved. You know, we'll give everybody AI, everyone can use it, and everybody will be happy. And the outcomes will just follow. They'll just come naturally, guys. Hey, give everyone AI, and everybody will be happy. And that didn't happen as smoothly as we thought or hoped for. I think there's a large challenge when you deploy AI around, well, first of all, the technology is difficult. I think if you look back to the start of it, even getting through the governance and the security that's needed to deploy AI to make sure the patient data is safe, is tricky, especially as Dr. Irwin said, in times when you haven't used AI much before, and this is one of your first projects, deploying AI is tricky because we don't have the knowledge base. It's a path that hasn't been particularly well trodden before in terms of making sure that all the right boxes are ticked and all your security experts are happy. As we've gone through several AI projects now, our security teams have become a lot more confident in what the processes are, and the safety requirements for each project are a lot more straightforward, or have become a lot more clarified in people's minds. So therefore, the process moves a bit quicker. So the whole governance and security issue at the start is tricky. The deployment itself is relatively straightforward, but as I said, I think there's the staff and stakeholder factors that come with this. Lots of our radiologists and radiographers were a little bit hesitant about using artificial intelligence, and that's borne out through a lot of things, worried about job security and AI taking away people's jobs, worrying about the accuracy of the algorithm, worried about using AI more work. So there's a lot of issues that need addressed as part of deployment. So one of the things that we've implemented now, anytime we bring AI in, we have a specific change management program, looking at how we can bring other stakeholders on board, how we can bring the users on board from the start, whether that's with specific training, creating super users. It's really just trying to get people as happy with using the product, because we find happy radiologists equals happy AI. And that means the patient outcomes improve. So it's really, to summarize, I guess, the tricky bits were getting the security right, making sure the patient details were safe, and making sure the anonymization was correct. Then the technical deployment was okay, but the difficult bit was just trying to get everyone else as engaged and enthusiastic as I was. I was telling everybody how excellent it was and how excited I was to use it, but not everybody was as excited as I was. And I think without key user engagement, AI suffers. So as a result, we've started to implement bigger change management processes along with the deployment of AI.
Yeah, and I think that's very good sort of insight, because essentially we're seeing two parts. We're seeing the integration, where we're talking about the security and the approval processes to get a software integrated into systems. But then there's a second element to it where, you know, it's about the end users knowing how to use the AI software in the right way for the intended purpose, and usability and adoption. It becomes almost a separate part of a project when you're rolling out something as big as AI. Dr. Irwin, did you see something similar in your sort of early adoption period around, you know, the radiologists and radiographers adopting AI in the way it should?
Yes, I totally agree with Dr. Hall. Some of the problems that he said they faced, we are currently facing now. So it is a real challenge. Obviously, there is a fear about the job issue about AI. That's always a problem. However, my consideration is, first you have to develop trust. I think that's the most important thing. That's why the first step that we're always trying to take is go through the proper metrics, make sure that the proper threshold, because once you have these things, what we're trying to do is we want to try to treat AI like a prescription drug, like any drug. For example, a doctor doesn't just use any drug that comes to market. He wants to make sure that it has passed all the proper necessary protocols to make sure that it's safe for the patient. So I believe that if we go through the motions, although they're longer and more difficult, eventually this might incur more trust from not just the radiologists, but also the clinicians in general. But that is still a problem. It's an obstacle we have to face, the trust issue. My take on the matter is, as much as possible, I prefer not to trust a machine. Instead, I prefer to trust the people behind the machine, the people you're working with, to help make sure that the AI is working properly for the good of your patient. So at least that's my take home. Let's trust each other and not just the machines that are being used by all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Irwin, is there any sort of training and education you've done sort of within your colleagues to help build that trust?
Like currently now, I usually give lectures at our annual conventions about artificial intelligence. So I've taken up some of the courses of the Radiologic Society of North America for AI, their foundational and their advanced certificate courses, as well as programming courses for AI. And I try to share these with my fellow rads, because I think the number one problem right now with AI adoption is we might be afraid of the wrong things, and we might be liking AI for also the wrong things. We have to curb the hype and try to focus on what AI really promises and where it can scale. Because like I said, the good thing about AI is it's very narrow intelligence. But if you focus it at the problem you want solved, it will really do it well. But first, like you already mentioned earlier, you have to define the problem. You can't create an AI solution and hopefully look for a problem for that solution. Instead, you have to define your specific problem first and then solve it with AI, or at least that's how I see it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, AI has to be solving a problem Otherwise, it becomes almost a useless piece of software, and AI is there to be that assistive tool to help, in the pathway of lung cancer. We're talking about earlier diagnosis, so these are better patient outcomes. Dr. Pasakan, I'm going to come over to you. Obviously, you sit in the oncology department, and I just want to know from your perspective around the adoption of AI, if you've seen any challenges and how these have been overcome.
Okay, thank you. I think for the challenge for the medical oncologist using the AI is I think it's in the globally that can we trust the AI and how much we trust. So owing to the Mr. Jensen Huang, the CEO of the NVIDIA that recently visited Thailand, he said that to become a sovereign in AI, we have 3 key elements are required. The first thing is building AI infrastructures in the organization. And the second thing is developing tools and expertise is using properly and using with the cognition. And the third thing is establishing the knowledge or the AI literacy in the organization. So for Thailand, we luckily we have the Royal College of Radiologists has conducted validation studies of the various AI brands amongst the Qure.ai that comparing them against 4 B reader level radiologists as part of the decision-making process for the Thailand FDA submission. We found that even within the same AI brand, the ability to detect different abnormalities varies. As we have the data that with the ROC curve that can detecting that different lesions with the different ROC curve. So we will know that which brand will have a weak point, with which brand it have a strong point in any brand. Because like in that I use in my area, that is a Qure.ai, it can detect many lesions of the Qure.ai, and it very fit for not only in the referral hospital for the cancer, but it can detect the pneumothorax. That is very it is very favors in the community hospital, because in our experience right now that over in 1 year, we starting using the AI in my hospital and gradually expanding to our network of the community hospital. We discovered that not only can detect likely nodular malignancy, which represented 24% of all detected nodules, but we can also detect the pneumothorax, a life-threatening condition, and this additional capability is particularly appreciated by the community hospital. So I think that using the Qure.ai is not only detect about the lung cancer, but need to have the expand the capability to other disease in the lung, or maybe in the heart disease like a heart failure, and also the life-threatening condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pasakan. Yeah, I think that's very useful, that there are a wide range of diseases and abnormalities on a chest X-ray, and those also shouldn't be forgotten as part of a patient's pathway or journey through a hospital. Now, I just want to go into sort of a bit more detail around the AI outputs and how they are looking, what they look like in a diagnostic lung cancer pathway. So just so our audience can understand what a radiologist or reporting radiographer would see as part of the AI accelerated pathway. So Dr. Mark Hall, I'm going to come to you. If you can just sort of describe to the audience what the AI outputs look like on your system and how you use it as a radiologist.
Yeah, so I think if we talk about chest X-rays first as our main problem here. So our patient comes and they get their X-ray taken by the radiographers. Immediately our AI and IT systems will retrieve that chest X-ray and send it to the cloud for AI analysis. So in our case, we're using Qure, and the output of the Qure.ai was put back into our viewing system and simultaneously into our patient organization system. So we went back into our PACS system. And what that meant is when the radiologist logged on to look at the x-rays, as well as having the patient's standard x-ray that was taken, alongside it, there would be the AI interpretation of it. And one of the key things with this AI is, and with every AI, it needs to be explainable. So we need to know why AI thinks there's an abnormality. And what most products do is they have a bounding box or an area or a big red flag or a big finger pointing and saying, here's the abnormality. This is why we think this case is abnormal. So the first thing it did was put the image back into PACS. That means that when anyone opened it, they could see it. The second thing it did in our system was it went into the patient booking system and the reporting system that our radiologists used. And for the ones that we thought, or that AI thought there was an urgent suspicion of cancer, so these patients that were sitting and had some key features that were defined by our department. In our case, we went for pulmonary mass, pulmonary nodule, cavity, hilar enlargement, or mediastinal widening. So we set the 5 criteria whilst working with Qure. And if an X-ray had any one of those findings, it was flagged by the artificial intelligence as urgent. And what that did was that meant that, or when a radiologist went in, they could see the cases that were urgent and therefore prioritize their reporting. So before this came in, we had cases that were sitting up to 6 weeks to get reported, and we were reporting just by the oldest. So sometimes when we opened these 6-week cases, there was a lung cancer sitting there, which was less than ideal, quite disheartening. What the AI aimed to do was that to stop that happening, all the ones that AI said there was suspicion of cancer, it went to the top of our pile for reporting so that our radiologist could report it the same day. So the output was really twofold. Number one, put AI's opinion back into the picture so we could see why AI thought there was an abnormality. And number two was create a priority system or priority flag within the patients where there was a suspicion of cancer so their x-rays could get reported first, all in the goal of trying to meet that 28-day target by the National Optimal Lung Cancer Pathway.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mark. And Dr. Irwin, I have the same question for you. If you can take some time to describe the pathway with AI integrated and the kind of outputs that you see as a radiologist.
Okay, so what we have is similar in part to what Dr. Hall explained, although not as advanced as their flagging system at the moment. What we have more is when I see an X-ray, I see the analysis of the AI side by side with the X-ray. So that's pretty much what we see. So there it says if it's a normal X-ray or if there are findings, then it gives words at the side. For example, if there's consolidation or a nodule or other findings, then like Dr. Hall mentioned, it might give you an outline of where the pathology might be. So sometimes in AI, we call that a saliency map or something similar to that, or a heat map. So that's currently how AI is being used in the way the radiologist reads. However, for sometimes in some hospitals, it's being presented as a potential form of a referral system. Like Dr. Hall also mentioned, that if the system flags that something might potentially require more attention, then this can be used to alert either the radiologist or the clinicians to maybe give it a second look, or maybe refer to a higher modality like a CT scan. So that's currently how we are, or at least how I'm being exposed to how AI is slowly being integrated into the radiologist's workflow. It has its bumps, but the kinks, I guess we're still all trying to work it out.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So just sort of rolling on to my next question. I know, Dr. Irwin, you're in your early phases of implementing AI, but just generally speaking, in your opinion, are you seeing the value of AI for early detection of lung cancer?
Well, all my friends know this. I'm very bullish when it comes to AI. I believe that no matter what we do, AI is the future. Whether we sit by or do nothing, AI is here to stay. It's like spreadsheets versus an abacus or the calculator. It's just going to happen. However, the future is not set in stone, and how we decide things today will determine our roles as radiologists and the roles of AI in the future. So there's definitely value in AI for early detection, but usually I'm kind of the one invited to some of the talks because I also have a healthy dose of skepticism. That's how I call it. That we want the best from AI, but we also need policies and guidelines to safeguard us from the worst of AI. Like I said, we want to catch as many cancers as early as possible, but we do not want to overdiagnose a cancer and start sending so many people for a chest CT scan and expose them unnecessarily to radiation. Because like I said, you might save people from lung cancer, but inevitably bring them a higher chance for thyroid cancer or even breast cancer. Because if you do a chest CT scan for the chest area, you can't not affect the breast. And breast cancer is the #1 cause of cancer in women. So these are the things we're always trying to balance out. So I believe that early detection of lung cancer is definitely a potential use for AI, provided that we have the proper guardrails and guidelines to protect us from the unwanted effects of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely align with that. I think finding the optimal use of AI with the right governance and policies and procedures would be the right balance between clinician and AI in the benefit of the patient, of course. Dr. Paskan, I have the same question for you. Are you seeing the impact of AI in Thailand for early lung cancer diagnosis?
Thank you very much. I think in Thailand, because approximately 900 governmental hospitals in Thailand of the shared X-ray are interpreted by the non-radiologists. So consequently, there is a higher chance of the missed lung cancer diagnosis occurring compared to when read by the radiologist. The question is, do AI help in these situations? But the first thing I have to say that in Thailand, we have a retrospective study by the higher experienced shared X-ray specialists examining the lung cancer patients referred to the academic center hospital. We found that among the 100 patients, nearly 80% had missed lung cancer diagnosis at the beginning, not 80%. This study said who missed the diagnosis, 56% is missed by the radiologist, and the 37% of the case missed because of even the radiologist reading there is something wrong, but the referring physician did not document the abnormality. So we have two steps of the mixed lung cancer diagnosis. Why did 70 years ago, we know that the sensitivity of the shared X-ray may be only 20 or 60%. But I think right now we have an advancement of the X-ray to the digital technology to have a computer assist, and also when using the AI assistant. In some study, we can increase the sensitivity of the shared X-ray to the 20 to 30% more. So the sensitivity right now in some study is about the 80%, from 60 to 80%. In some study is 60 to 90%. So I think it's have very impact the role of the detecting of the abnormality in the shared X-ray, especially with the lung nodules. And in the study of the Taiwan and in Japan, they found that in the same program of the AI, detecting with the different data from the Japan and from Taiwan, we found that if more than 1 centimeter, the AI can detect comparatively. So I think AI shared X-ray will change of the detecting of the missed lung cancer in Thailand per se, because 90% of the shared X-ray in Thailand we read by the non-radiologists. So the AI that standardized with the B-reader radiologist already and have the FDA approved. So it may be not quite the same, but I think it better than the non-radiologist to see without the AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paskan. That's really interesting to hear from Thailand side of the use case being quite clear there from what I'm hearing. Dr. Mark Hall, I have the same question for you from Glasgow. If you're seeing the value of AI as part of the lung cancer pathway.
Yeah, I think what we found is that before we entered, again, I keep going back to this optimal lung cancer pathway that we weren't meeting. We looked at our x-rays in my hospital in the Queen Elizabeth, and on average, the reporting time for any x-ray was about 180 hours, which I don't know what the rest of the world thinks, but it's a bit too long for us. But so the key target was to try to bring that number down. So what we did when we implemented AI was we had radiologists look at it using the priority code I described earlier for urgent reporting. And then my hospital, we brought the average reporting time down to, or the median time down to 3 hours from 187. And as expected, though, the average time didn't change because we were only reporting the urgent ones quicker. The suspicion of cancer ones were quicker. The rest of the patients who sat with their regular x-rays that were normal or had less important abnormalities were still taking the 187 hours. So it really just affected the small proportion of x-rays that were urgent suspicion of cancer. And what that did was then, once we had found the urgent suspicion of cancer x-rays, we expedited their CT scans. So we tried to get these patients turned around for a CT within the same day, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. So really using the AI to kickstart the rest of the pathway to see if we could bring it down. And we were successful in doing that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Mark. So I think it's been really interesting to see how AI is evolving in the lung cancer space in different countries. I'm interested to know, Ashwani, I'm going to come over to you. I'm interested to know how it would impact pharmaceutical companies like AstraZeneca if we're looking at more incidental findings, more early lung cancer diagnosis. What would that mean for a company like AstraZeneca?
Look, I think for us, we set out on this ambition to, through Lung Ambition Alliance, to ensure that we deploy 5 million chest x-rays or scans by 2025. Now, how is that going to translate to something that is tangible for the patients, right? It will rewrite cancer care. So what hopefully this will enable is it will enable us to detect lung cancer early and for patients to be treated early and get treatment early. So for a pharmaceutical company like AstraZeneca, what we are doing is we are moving the needle into the future in managing and treating cancer and rewriting cancer care early. Some of the impacts that it will need to transcend through the time to generate redefining cancer care is, number one, we are deploying this at a population level. So through Lung Ambition Alliance, for example, Dr. Pasakon, Dr. Irwin, Dr. Mark, they're all deploying it at population level. And how that is going to generate an impact for the patient, that is one thing that we need to look at. Not over-engineering it, as Dr. Irwin pointed out, with radiation exposure, but being able to translate AI-generated chest X-ray into low-dose CT scans and enhance treatment and bring it forward a little. So that's one. The second one is validating this technology. So, through our efforts, we have to ensure that we're validating this technology and making sure that, this technology actually works as we deploy it at a large scale into population. So that is something that we're doing with Qure.ai, and, hopefully we will have some results in this evidence generation area next year. So once we have evidence in validation of the concept, real world population evidence, what we do is we then take it to policymakers and hopefully we can implement it at a larger scale within the markets to enable early detection of lung cancer at population level. Whether is it just through incidental, going to a local health clinic and, getting an X-ray and has AI and it's able to detect it incidentally, number one, or through integrating it within existing screening programs, such as TB screening programs at population level. Is that something that we can integrate EI to, enhance early detection for lung cancer, or even COPD early screening programs? So those are some of the examples of the tangible changes that, we look to hopefully implement step by step in achieving our Lung Ambition Alliance.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's useful to see the bigger picture. So thank you for that. Now, I am mindful of the time, so I will be asking my final question. We understood the challenges around lung cancer, how AI can support some of these challenges, and the bigger picture with patients at the center of what we do. Now, there are obviously many countries, many hospitals and institutes that are less familiar with AI and maybe are thinking of implementing AI to solve some of their local resource issues or whatever it is that they're looking to resolve by the use of AI. Now, my question is, if you was to give advice to some of these hospitals that are looking at implementing AI, what advice would you give them from your own experiences? So, Dr. Mark Hall, I'll come to you first, if you can share any insights or experiences.
Yeah, perfect. I think the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you've identified the gap or a pathway that's a problem. I wouldn't go to the market first and have a look around the marketplace and go, which AI can we try, or which one should we buy? I'd like to try this one. I think you need to identify your need. And that's really looking at where's your backlogs in reporting or where's your delays. And this can be done as a collaborative approach with all your stakeholders. So not just radiology, but the physicians, your health board management. What's your health center's priority at the moment? And then how can you use AI to solve that problem? So I wouldn't just jump feet first in without having a little think about how deep the pool is. What my next tip, I guess, would be just to make sure that the AI works on your own local population. It's really easy with some of these off-the-shelf products to find out that, well, it was great in its testing set and it's great in its published literature, but Scotland's full of a lot of obese people who smoke a lot. And we have a total different population set to lots of parts of the world. So does the AI work in your place? And you can do that, as Dr. Irwin said, with some pilot testing or some validation on your local set. And then the last part is really, certainly in the NHS, things take a while. Again, you want things to happen quickly with AI. You're excited to get this new research product or product on the go, but governance and ensuring safety compliance is a large proportion of the project. And it takes a while for your staff members, your e-health or whoever your data security are, who haven't used much AI before, to get their head around the security processes. So whenever you're designing or starting a project or implementing something you're going to purchase, just be aware that it doesn't start the next day. You can't just suddenly buy AI and it's going to work off the shelf. It does take some time to work through with your e-health team to make sure. And if it's the first product you're deploying in the NHS, you're looking at building 6 months into the start of something, because that's how long it takes, especially for a company that's relatively, or a department that's relatively AI naive. I've got lots more tips, but I feel like I can stop at 3.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Dr. Irwin, the same question to you, please.
So I guess I'll give 2 types of answers. The first one is technical and the second one is personal. So for the technical answer, I believe you can divide AI into 2 stages. One is research and the other one is actual deployment. For research, I would suggest you could check the claim checklist from the RSNA. They give you a nice guidelines on what to look for in research papers when you want to view or vet AI research. But the next one is deployment, when you actually want to buy an AI product for your hospital. I usually, in my lectures, I mentioned the ECLAIR guidelines. So these are another set of guidelines you can use when actually purchasing a product. So that's the technical. From a personal standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, I started or jumped into AI from a programming perspective. So I joined the hype. I thought it was all about programming. Program the best AI and you're done. But it's not. After that, I went into some research and I thought, okay, so long as you get published, it's done. But finally, I realized more than anything, AI isn't just about working with the machine. It's about working with people. So at the final stage, it really boils down to policy, because you might have the best AI in the world, but if you don't have the proper policy so your people can use it, as you said earlier, to use it based on, given the intended use case, it can still fall flat on its face. So I think that's the most important part. let's not trust the AI per se. Let's trust each other to make sure that the AI works for all of us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Owen. Dr. Pasakan, if you'd like to add anything.
Yeah, I think using the AI for is similar to learning about any new screening test. And but we need to develop the AI literacy as a user. I think as a user, I think it need to include the understanding the testing system, the registration process, the performance metrics, the real world effectiveness in our setting. And following the guidelines of the NHS of the UK recommendation and also the Thai healthcare guidelines that we suggest about that the AI in the real world practice may be quite less effectiveness than in the study. So in the post-marketing surveillance is important. When we use in any AI, we have to reporting back to the developer and have to contribute because even though we don't report back, we have to use that AI per se. So if we report that back, the developer will improve to the AI improvement, and it will have the continuous monitoring and also the evaluation. And our using AI, we have more clever. And the third thing is, I think, the important emphasis that the AI currently serves as a co-pilot. So the physician must still review the results and approve the findings and also make the final decisions. I think for using the AI right now, um, mm, it will be our friends. So I think we have to learn, we have to know each other. And so we can use it brilliantly. And I think more, we think we can help the patients more. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pasakan. Dr. Ashwini, if you'd like to share any insights or your views that for any sort of hospital that's looking to implement AI as part of lung cancer.
I think they've all given really good tips. Ultimately,
Yeah.
you need to look at the resources that you have and the landscape that you have to implement it. So don't rush into it and be like, okay, I just want to do this, just to have a study, or, look at the broad base of what your health system looks like. How is AI going to generate an added value to that system? So, for example, in Vietnam, for example, we did, one where we integrated AI X-ray into the TB screening program. So that is already an existing program. You don't have to create anything from scratch, integrating into that and then building upon that. So I think that is one. And I think the second thing is we need to also ensure that, yes, we're planning just the initiation of, AI into chest X-rays for early screening, but how are we going to close that loop for that patient? And get them into the right treatment care pathway. So I think that's the other important things to plan as well, not just the initiation, but then how's that patient then going to funnel up into getting their low dose CT scans and the right care that they deserve. So yeah, those are the 2 points I'd like to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the full pathway is an important point and definitely shouldn't be forgotten. With that in mind, we are closing towards the end of this webinar. We do have a Q&A, live Q&A session, which will be, I think we've only got 5 minutes left. The team will let me know. There are some questions in the Q&A chat. If one of our speakers are able to answer those, or I'm happy to read those out. But before we do that, I'd just like to take a minute to thank all of our panelists and speakers for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, understanding how you work in the various countries, the challenges, and what are we doing to help resolve some of these issues in lung cancer by using AI. So thank you so much for making time today. It's very much appreciated, and I think everyone has learned a lot today with the close conversations and collaborations. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just going to take a few minutes to have a look at the questions. So I'm just going to read these out, and just check if anyone would like to answer them. Okay, so how can AI help, especially in high volume screening environments for lung cancer detection? Does anyone want to have a go at answering that question?
Sure, I'll answer anything. So this is tricky in general because the UK is moving towards CT screening for lung cancer. Again, the evidence worldwide is almost there, but not quite. So once if you bring in a screening program with any form of imaging in it, the healthcare system in the UK is in a lot of trouble. It's labor intensive looking at images, and if you're suddenly going from increasing the number of CT scans you do by 1 million or 500,000 per year, 200,000 per year, then you're going to have to find someone to report them, and there's no capacity at the moment to do that. We've seen that some places in the UK have brought in lung cancer screening for pulmonary nodules in Manchester. And what they've done, they've had to use AI to support the radiologists to turn over the reporting time. It's shortened the reporting time, and AI essentially provides a first read or an opinion or finds the abnormalities, and then the radiologist ends up dismissing them or agreeing with them as a time-saving process. So AI is really essential to bringing in any future screening programs that involve radiology. The baseline capacity that might have been there a decade ago or 2 decades ago when lung cancer screening came in just isn't there anymore. And there's no slack in the system to provide screening programs that involve humans looking at things. So as a result, it's going to be essential. You can't use, there will be no new screening programs that don't use AI, I imagine, brought in worldwide anymore, because I don't think there's enough radiologists or reporting radiographers to look at them.
Thank
So
you
as a
for that,
support
Mark.
mechanism, essentially, a support mechanism, or maybe
Yeah.
one day automated reporting, but that's another chapter, which I'd love to get to.
Thank you, Mark, for that. Okay, moving on to the next question. So a question is, how are patients generally reacting to the use of AI in reading their scans, and what is the typical patient sentiment? Does anyone want to have a little
I mean,
go
I can
at
answer again, of
answering?
course.
Thank you, Mark.
You guys just get to listen to a little bit more of my Irish accent. So we held a few patient focus groups at the start of our research to find out that exact question. And we thought patients might be a little bit more skeptical or hesitant about AI, but the overwhelmingly positive feedback. I think with AI entering most people's lives in other ways through devices that can speak to you, or translators, or maps that can take you places, or cars that can autonomously drive, patients have seen AI come in and haven't had any problems with it. So I think their fears that might have been there a decade ago are no longer are less important. What we usually say to them when we first brought it in, discussed it with them, well, you get on a plane at the moment and there's autopilot, but there's still a human there. What we had to reiterate to patients was AI is providing some support for radiologists, but at the end of the day, there's still a human in the loop, and there's still a human looking at these pictures, and they felt very reassured by that. So anything that could speed up, and if they can get them to understand why we're using it and bring them in as stakeholders early on in either research or deployment of technology, then if they feel listened to and they can help design some language that might be on posters or information leaflets around your department. So overwhelmingly positive. As long as it speeds up their diagnosis of cancer, they're happy for pretty much most things to come in.
Thank you, Mark, for that. Okay, next question. Do you need healthcare workforce that are digitally competent to ensure safe and effective use of AI in radiology?
Hello.
Dr. Irwin? Yep, please go ahead.
So I get asked this sometimes, even here, about digital competency, because sometimes when AI is presented to us, the offering is that it might be cheaper because you might need fewer radiologists. But my answer to that is the effective implementation of AI requires an entire new type of team, not just of the doctor side or the domain expert, but also of the computer scientist, the data scientist, and the AI engineer. So it does require a certain level of expertise. However, the question of digital health workforce, of a competent digital workforce, it could be a computer scientist that is more exposed to healthcare, actually going on rounds with a doctor, or it could be a radiologist or a doctor who's learning more about data science. So I think the thing about medicine, if you know that our years of training keeps growing, it used to be a few years, and then it went to 9 years, then you have subspecialization. I believe that in the coming age of AI, a lot of this is again going to be absorbed into healthcare. It might eventually be a required form of training. So it's not that I'm going to be a data scientist or that I'm going to be a computer scientist. It's more of additional forms of education might have to be added to the basic sciences for healthcare. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Dr. Irwin. Okay, we have 2 more questions. So, can AI be effectively integrated into all stages of lung cancer detection, including both the screening pathway for early detection in high-risk individuals and the incidental detection pathway, where lung cancer is discovered during imaging for other conditions?
Yeah, Shamie, I can take that. Oh, sorry. Mark, you'd like to take that?
Oh,
No,
I love the sound of my own voice, Ashwini. You can go ahead. You can go ahead. Everyone's heard enough of me.
I think I touched upon this earlier, whereby if you deploy AI in, let's say, X-ray at a primary care center, you can hit, all of this. So one is, if you'd like to screen high-risk individuals, then you have like a questionnaire or something to say, let's say if people have a smoking history or a family history of lung cancer or any exposures to biomass fuel, and then they get risk stratified and then go into a screening program. So that is one. Then you have patients who are just coming into that primary care center where AI is already integrated within that X-ray system. They're getting a chest X-ray, and then you will have incidental detection pathways, or people who are coming for health screening who have incidental detection pathways. And then the other tailored form of where it can be integrated is, as I mentioned, in TB care pathways or COPD care pathways where you can integrate them. Mark, if I missed anything, to jump in.
I was just going to say that AI is moving very much from single task focus to pathway focus. What we start seeing is just AI initially just did a single task and it was great, it's going to do one thing, but as AI is developed, it's moving to look at the whole pathway of that. So you can really look at the initial detection, then you can look at patient management and the flow, and more of the generative approach to things, providing summaries for patients in clinics. You can look at AI looking at the pathology, and you can look at AI supporting kind of MDT outputs and things. So I think what we've done is really the past couple of years is looked at AI in silo and how it just operates by itself, but we'll clearly see that it can actually affect more than just the imaging part of it. I suspect over the next 5 years, we'll see AI looking at the whole pathway, and then eventually AI looking at multiple body systems at once and multiple pathways at once. But really at the moment, single task is the kind of focus, but we're just expanding that out into pathways.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think we have one more question. So, which approach would add more value in terms of AI chest X-ray, whether detection of nodule/prioritization of any suspicious cancer findings? Anyone want to have a go at that question? I think what the question is actually trying to say, where is the most value? Is it in prioritization or is it in picking up suspicious cancer findings? But yeah, I'm not sure who wrote that question, but they can rewrite it if I've got it, if I've misinterpreted it.
Obviously, I can try and answer this. So I think it depends
Yeah.
on who we're looking at or how you define values, the first thing. Are we looking at time saving for radiologists? Are we looking, because it depends what your need and your shortage is. So again, it comes back to that needs analysis. What's the problem you're trying to solve? If it's a lack of radiologists, then prioritization doesn't really help you because you're not got anything extra to report. It's not saving time. It's really trying to get to the patients first. But patients would find that more important because then they're the ones that are getting treated quicker. So it's really looking at what your overall goal is to what the treatment is. Pulmonary nodules, again, might speed up your reporting time. There's some clever things out there you can look at where AI reads the report and try to find the nodules for you to make sure patients don't slip through the gaps. And then you're looking at terms of value in terms of, well, litigation or missed cancers. So I think it's a really tricky one. And I think the answer will change as we move from chest X-ray to CT for screening. So I think or what your healthcare system uses. At the moment, we were trying to meet this 28-day optimal lung cancer pathway. So our priority and value really was in trying to get the chest X-rays through the system so that we can meet that pathway. But different health boards will have different answers, depending on what their need is. A political
Brilliant,
answer, I'm
thank you.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Sometimes it is. Okay, I think we've answered all the questions. So I think the webinar has come to a natural end. Just a one final thank you to all of our speakers today for joining me. It's been very insightful, and hopefully all of our audience has learned a lot from your experiences. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.